to learn the martial arts.
Big surprise. Huge surprise.
I'm starting to get in a bad mood, you know? Maybe it's like a mood swing, my hormones, I don't know. You know, maybe it's my need to impose my will.
Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. Kicking It is tonight's episode, or I should say show. I'm Rob, your host. I'm transmitting live in the underground bunker in the bowels of Pound Hills Palace, and I've got the real Dr. V on a live satellite video feed. I believe the sat phone is up. Are you there, sir?
It's going.
You have a little bit of bass to your voice. I wonder why that is.
Thanks, puberty. I'm not sure.
All right. We're going to get to that.
It's just hitting late.
Puberty is an apt theme to cover in tonight's movie, which is 1986's Firewalker with Chuck Norris and Louis Gossett Jr., I guess. I always call him Louis Gossett. And I got to say, Doctor, going up through puberty myself in the 80s, and that dates me, of course, somewhat, I will simply say that this 80s film, a canon classic, if you will, has everything right and everything wrong about movies in the 1980s. It has top-notch action stars. It's got faraway sets. It's an action. It's an adventure. It's a romance. It's a chase for gold. It's got the hidden Inca gold treasure. It's got the maps. It's got everything. And a set pieces suck. And there's real no TNA. There's actually no adult fornication. There's really nothing going on. This is pretty much an odd film because it's, by all film standards, it's not a good film. Honestly, let's just come right out with it. That being said, it's thoroughly watchable because it's so 80s-fied. If you knew nothing about the 80s, then this might be lost on you because it would be like, I don't get it. I don't see what the big deal is. Well, we'd come off of Invasion USA that we'd recently covered on Kicking It in the earlier stream with Chuck Norris because that's when he blew up. And Canon Films was rocking and rolling, and Chuck Norris apparently took this script, and it's like, yeah, it's like Romancing the Stone. It's like Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's a buddy comedy. What can go wrong? And I gotta say, this is probably the most digestible film for an 8-year-old boy to watch because it's completely harmless. Lots of stereotypes, horrible editing. I mean, it's bad. But here's the thing: it's got Chuck Norris in it, and I know Louis Gossett Jr. has won an Oscar already a few years before this. So it's kind of like fun, even though it's not a good movie. It's to me, it's kind of like worth a watch a little bit. So. Yeah, Firewalker. Wow, what's your initial impressions about this film?
Well, was the guy drinking Fireball when he was writing the script?
No.
Seriously. This is the first time we've ever seen Chuck Norris given a script where he can actually be a comedian a little bit, This is basically like they're kind of like playing off the Indiana Jones vibe that was going on in the late 80s. Same with what was the other movie with the I forgot who it was. I want to say Kirk Douglas, but it wasn't.
Romancing the Stone. Yeah.
That was that. And then there was another one where these two guys were trying to it was Sutherland. I'm not sure who it was, but they were trying to steal gold. I think it was Alan Quartermain.
Alan Quartermain, Lost City of Gold, and that's the guy whose name escapes me from Roots because he was the I'm sorry, not Roots, but the Thornbirds, because he was the one that the lovely later Rachel Ward was having an affair with, I believe, if I recall correctly. Richard Chamberlain, there it is. I had to keep talking until my subconscious blew it out. Yes. Oh, you had lots of these in the 80s. You had like C and D level knockoffs on TV shows and stuff for this. But yeah, I mean, this was done at the exact same time that this movie could be done, complete with a lot of ethnic type scenarios, shall we say? I mean,
yeah. This is basically like it's almost on. It's not as silly as UHF, but you could tell they're mocking all the stuff, the tropes. You got the hot girl, the two guys who were trying to make a quick buck, uh, and you got the Indians who's in there. Here's a couple different scenes that stood out to me. There's a one scene where they had to climb up this cave, and the one guy's, I ain't gonna do this. It's a holy ground. And he's like, okay, whatever. They climb. They finally get up there, and they go in there, and she's like, I ain't going there. There might be old people are sleeping in there.
It
Just
just
go in there.
it's incoherent. I mean, it makes no sense. I mean, it's not like completely stupid, but this is what I mean by an '80s theme that I like to discuss sometimes with '80s movies is at the time in the '80s there's this since about 81, 82, let's say, there was this big sense of optimism, and it was really exciting to be a part in the '80s. And I say in pop culture, there were so many things that people thought were good or at the very least entertaining. And one divisive topic would be the song Mr. Roboto by Styx. People say that killed the band. People hate it, say it's not real music and all that, but a lot of people would say, you know what, a whole generation of people grew up knowing this song, and anywhere you go people want to hear Mr. Roboto. So in movies, Chuck Norris, you and I started doing the Chuck Norris films because one, I like them, but two, you didn't really see a lot of the early ones, so you kind of wanted to see what the thing was about Chuck Norris, or if there was, or even if you liked it. And frankly, it was an experiment because I didn't know how you would take it. T saying here in chat that this must have influenced the National Treasure movies. I love adventure type fun movies like National Treasure or even Firewalker to a much more limited extent, because I tell you what, the best thing about this film, Firewalker, honestly, is just it seems like at least Chuck Norris, if nobody else, is sort of having fun doing this. And for when
Mhm.
we talk about the early Chuck Norris films, the one thing I always said was is he was a bit earnest. He was like an adult Boy Scout, if you will, and he just resonates, I think, with Middle America, just being an American. Worked for everything that he got. He ended up in films, not necessarily seeking it out. Um, and so for him to do something a little lighthearted like this because he can, I don't really have a problem with it. But in the '80s, you had a lot of people trying to start to venture out of their comfort zones. They'd misfire, they'd go back to it. Some people got ruined by it, but who nobody cared in the '80s because everything was so much fun. If it didn't make sense, it didn't matter because ultimately what you got
Well,
in
yeah,
pop culture was fun. It didn't matter if it was stupid lyrics. Yngwie Malmsteen gets ridiculed because he would sit there and say, "Oh, the music's not important." People are like, "Well, what are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, I write all the music for all the instruments. I'm a virtuoso, and if the lyrics aren't all that great, who cares as long as you remember the music?" And in a way, I agree with that. In this film, who really cares about the plot? There's not much. It's bare bones at best, but they try to be entertaining in the cheesy canon way. Now, canon, I gotta say, did all these great little B, C level films, the Death Wish sequels, this, but they also did some good things too. So it's not like this is a fly by night thing. And Chuck Norris was their biggest star, so he had the stroke, he had the juice to be able to do something like this. So who cares if it sucks? If you're entertained,
yeah.
that's okay.
No,
Now,
no.
what do you think?
This came off the movie, basically the whole reason they did this comedy is because, well, that was the whole thing with Gen Xers. You guys were the rebels. You guys went against, well, oh, this might be offensive. We didn't care. It was funny. We always went ahead of fun. So you made fun of somebody else in there. It was all good humor. It's nobody took it personally. Um, but yeah, this movie though is like you said. There's a scene in there when they go into the cave up there, and she's like, ah, they walk in and they run over there and they come across her and she's laying on like this. I guess most ancient ritual sacrifice table or something. And she's got the skull on, pretending to be. Like, oh, it's just like this. It's just like an Abbott and Costello movie almost. And yeah, there's a scene in there. They come across a native Indian. He's in there with the tribal gear and stuff. And he's like, shoot him. So Chuck Norris shoots, and he shoots. It's a horrible shot. He shoots to the
That's the
right and
running
to the
gag.
left.
Is he can't shoot his gun straight.
I know,
It's
I know,
stupid.
I know. But what's funny is like, so they're in there, and there's another guy. They keep shooting the arrows at him. The guy who's shooting the arrows is a horrible shot too, because he keeps hitting the rock and not him.
He's like,
It's
he's
like
got us trapped in. I'm like, this is like the police squad shooting scene where they're like 4
I know.
feet away
He's
from
like, I
each
only got
other.
one, and he's like, I only got one bullet, and he's like, the other guy's like, here, give it to me. I don't trust you. He's like, no, I got it. He shoots, and it goes, and it just ricochets, for like about 2 minutes, and then finally hits the guy.
Ed's saying a channel, and I think this is kind of relevant to the movie. He says when you only had 6 channels to watch, then this was on, you'd watch it. And you're absolutely right. It's like, well, let's see what's on. Oh, nothing else is on. Let me sit down and watch it. Or you go outside and play, or maybe go listen to some records or some tapes. But yeah, this movie, look, it starts off, and if you're not sure, you're like, oh, it's Chuck Norris, and they start off in this desert, and there's this jeep, and they're running around, and bad guys are catching them. It's like, okay, it's a cool little hook, and then you see these banditos chasing them, and they're throwing grenades at him. He's like, take a left, and he like goes right or whatever, and he's like, it doesn't matter, we're in a desert. And then he realizes when he makes the wrong turn, technically, that he flies into a little oasis there, grounds out their car. And then what I thought, okay, if you don't know what I mean by this being a dumb, silly movie is you hear this car, this dirt buggy coming over the hill,
Dune
and
buggy, yeah.
yeah, dune buggy, and it's all decked out like it's like this, like a lantern festival. It's like this Asian thing. This guy gets out, and I'm like, wow, I know everybody's just making light of it, but boy, today everybody would be triggered, like, oh my god, I can't believe they did that. Like, this is so stupid. And of course, he leaves him out there to die, and Chuck Norris has the stupid things. Oh, he's going to say something dumb like, I would say you again. And breaks the
Yeah,
Perrier body with his hands and gets out, and it's just, yeah, there's just, oof, yeah. Mm. This whole movie is just a collection of those kinds of scenes. It's so
this
silly.
makes you just want to go watch Top Secret of Val Kilmer. This whole
Yeah.
movie is,
Let's
and
talk a
they
little bit
got the
about
bad.
Melody Anderson, though. Go ahead.
Melody Anderson's hot in this. Is like, man, it's like, and I'm just waiting for her and Chuck Norris to hook up,
And they
because
never
Chuck
do.
Norris has a habit is when he's the main lead, he always gets the girl.
Yep.
It's that's the way that's always been.
Yeah.
Um,
She
but as
sees
far as
visions.
yeah, right,
No explanation why she just does.
yes. I mean, what was it the guy that came across the old Native American? They wanted to ask permission. He's like, oh, and he's like, oh, they're like, this is for you, a gift. He's like, oh, when white man wants something, he gives you a gift. And he's like, yeah, and then the black guy's like, right on, brother. He's like, oops, sorry.
That was kind of funny.
But it's funny because like here's his little they first show the scene, they show like the little tiki hut, and then they pan over, and then here's like there's like a shack, and that's where he's living, in the shack. He doesn't live in the tiki hut; it's just out there for show. And he's in there, he's watching I Love Lucy, and he makes a comment. He's like, "Oh, if that was my wife, I would have," because there's Lucy's husband said like, he's gonna punch you. He's like, "How many times I'm gonna punch you?" He's like, and so the Indian makes a comment. He's like, "Yeah, if that was my wife, I would have cut her nose off." And I was like, "Okay, it's kind of creepy," but
He's like, yeah, I don't know
but
why I put up with it.
but I'm looking at this. I'm like, he's watching a TV. I see a cord going down to nowhere.
I know. and it's in this little hut in the desert, and you're like, I don't see electricity lines.
it's, but no, it's just it's been funny. And then you got this bad Indian guy, because she's like, because originally when she came to him at the bar, she's like, yeah, here's this treasure, and and there's this one guy. There's this Cyclops who's trying to kill me with a red hair or redheaded Cyclops. It's like, what? So then obviously she doesn't know what she's talking about, because we come across the villain. He's just got an eye patch, like a pirate eye patch, and he's Indian, and what's funny about this guy, he does the whole thing like a Humperdinck, and was it Princess Bride or no, it was Robin Hood Men Murder. It was a Humperdinck. It was the other guy. It was the sheriff in Prince of Thieves, or no, Men in Tights. Sorry. So his thing that he has his eye patch keeps switching eyes throughout the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And there's actually one scene he's going to kill this guy. And he's like, "Oh, don't kill me!" And he's choking. He's like, and he leans out. The guy who's getting killed leans out and moves his eye patch to the right side.
This is
He
the
corrects
worst
him
eye patch I've ever seen in a film. I mean, it's not even close. I mean, I tried capturing it here in one of the stills that's passing through. I see it right now, but it may be delayed, or it might have already passed through, where it's like half up on his eye. And this guy too, it's like Chuck Norris is like average height guy, right? I thought Louis Gossett played ball back in the day, and he's tall, but this Indian guy, he was one of the two bad guys actually in 48 Hours with Eddie Murphy, Nick Nolte originally. He was one of the two convicts, I believe, and he scared the hell out of me. Just goes through talk, and then here it's like he's got like about I don't know, maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes worth of screen time. So you don't get his brooding presence or anything like that. He's just there to be the bad guy for no reason. And they find this dagger, and then he find, and the skull that just lit up for no reason, and there's a stupid map, and they're taking Polaroids everywhere like they're at a friggin' theme park. I mean, it's like they're
she
at
is,
Disney or
and
something.
he makes a comment when they're on the train. He's like, how many photos do you need?
Yeah, so like to
And
me,
I had the dude, I had the old camera, what she's carrying, the little rectangle ones. I have one of those
oh
still.
yeah, oh yeah. See, somebody had mentioned in chat there about Walker, Texas Ranger, and all that. And this we had talked about for I thought the year before this, 1985, when Invasion USA came out, that we saw the transition of Chuck Norris gone from completely physical type roles to more of an action superstar with guns, or like in this case, a comedy, trying things out. And of course, in a few years, he'd end up doing Walker, Texas Ranger. And at his age, because he's not a young guy in this movie by any means, he
No.
still can deliver some goods, which we'll talk about in a moment. But I never watched Walker. That's my one of my confessions, and I know that later on tonight, when we're going to be doing our top 10 movies that you've never seen, and that ought to be interesting because I don't know what they
Yes.
are. I
It,
never watched Walker, but here's the thing with Walker: everyone I met who watched Walker said it was fun, it was lighthearted, it was entertaining. You got your like kick at the end of the movie, or you got your little Chuck Norris ism,
yeah, or
and you
he
were
kicks the bad guy.
satisfied.
Yeah,
Yeah, and this is what I
yeah.
told you before with the whole early movies. Some of them weren't so good, but we've watched a lot, and actually, a lot of people have checked them out. Literally, some of them are closing on 1,000 views. Chuck Norris just has a thing about him where it's entertaining to watch him. Like I say, it's not a good movie. It captures a lot of the goofy stuff of the 80s, and it's really more of a metaphor for what you could do in the
Yes.
80s. If you had some cachet and you were around a little bit, you could try something out like this. And Melody Anderson, I said, let's talk about her. I look at her and I go, that's the Flash Gordon girl. And Flash Gordon had a
Oh yeah.
very understated scene that, to me, whenever I think of Flash Gordon, what I think of is her. That's a scene where he walks in. They're meeting Ming the Merciless, and Flash is walking out, and he's all serious face or like that, and he's like, "Earthling, who are you?" And he's like, "Flash Gordon, quarterback, New York Jets." I'm like, I friggin' love it. And then there's this scene with Melody and her where he's fighting through her like that. She's like, "Flash, Flash, Flash, I love you." But we only have 24 hours to save the Earth. And I'm like, yeah, that's just typical woman. And it's perfect. And I always think of her in there. She seems like a good fit between these three. But it's such a. As much as you see Chuck trying to woo her in this, it's pretty sexless. That's why I say this movie is so harmless. The violence, the ethnic stuff, right on, brother. The dirt buggy, dune buggy. I mean, even the ending where they go to sacrifice the girl, there's no mention of her being a virgin or anything. And of course, they get the gold walkout, and there's no problem, even though gold weighs a ton. It's just, wow, there's so many better movies out there. But again, this did good business at the time, not great, but it's considered a flop by their standards. But it was one of the bigger producing ones at the time. But my God, like I say, if you didn't experience the 80s or see a ton of 80s stuff, you'd look at this and go, I don't get it. And I couldn't blame you for it. That being said, this is still better than the Meg. So let's talk about the bar fight scene. I know you were raving about this. Let me hear it.
This is the best scene of the whole entire movie. Is the whole bar fight. So you actually see a serious Chuck Norris just kicking the crap out of people.
Here, hold my gum. Now hold my beer, hold my gum.
I mean, you get some sweet kicks in this. You get some nice roundhouse, like just elbow jabs and a punch and stuff. This is what I. This the whole bar fight scene. Did it remind you of the what was the other one we watched?
All of them.
Uh, no. The last one with the guy who couldn't die, the killer guy.
Oh
This Code of
yes.
Silence.
No. This
Was
is
it?
the one
No,
with the
it was.
tagline of "Science created him, now Chuck Norris must destroy him," and that was 1982. It was kind of the horror movie one, Silent Rage.
Silent Rage. Yes. So
Yes.
this had the same vibe. It says the bar scene. Uh, it was of course it had it was a little lighthearted at first, but then when he started doing it, it's like dang, it's like he was just beating the crap out of people. This is what I wanted to see with Chuck Norris movies, and this is what we. So I was thankful they at least gave us this. Yeah, there's a lot of movies or Chuck Norris. They didn't show as much martial arts. That was Invasion USA. Now this whole comedy, lighthearted comedy, brings me back to the other one we watched with him, where he was a semi truck driver. We went to the little town. He had to free his brother, get his brother out of jail, the corrupt town.
We
This had
didn't
the same
actually
kind of.
cover Breaker Breaker.
I know, but this reminds me of Breaker Breaker as far as like the lighthearted comedy a little bit. This
Yeah, I could see that. Breaker Breaker is yeah. Wow,
it
I'm
wasn't it
debating, but
wasn't
we'll get to it eventually. I know that it's
yeah
a
it,
seedy
it
film.
wasn't yes and it wasn't a serious Chuck Norris. It was kind of like it's kind of him joking around a little bit, at the beginning.
All right,
You
right.
know? So, but yeah, this is like Hot Shots. That's what it
Yeah.
reminded me of.
That's not so much the running gags, kind of police squadish type thing.
Yeah,
Which the
yeah.
Zemeckis brothers, one of them might have written Hot Shots. Actually, I think was involved in it perhaps. So it reminds you like that. There's definitely some crossover there. Yes, Perrier product placement. I do like Perrier by myself. I admit that Perrier with a lime goes a long way. Mineral water, love it. Um, yeah, it's just like I say in the 80s. Around 85, 86, you could do no wrong basically, and everybody was so happy to go out and catch a film, and this would have been the perfect movie. You knew it was a cheese fest. You'd go out and you see it like a midnight movie or something. You'd have a little bit of fun, and the people made it knew it and delivered it, and they weren't trying to make Gone with the Wind or something serious. They were just trying to make something that would fill it up, be a bit entertaining. Like I say, I think at the least watching Chuck Norris enjoy himself and try to be full of himself as far as comedy with these one-liners is interesting because he's not like it, so it's different. And if you've watched a lot of Chuck Norris up to now, this will shock you. Now, whether he does a good job of it or not, that's up for you to decide when you watch it. But yeah, this is just such a goofy, movie. And like I say, a lot of people will say it sucks. I would argue, because I like to do this, that this is still a lot better than most movies that came out in 2019 by far. Because one, again, it goes back to what we talk about. It's mildly entertaining. It's a bit harmless. It's not serious. It's not woke. It's not trying to be any of those other craps. We're going to talk about the Indian girl that tried to poison them and sleep with them or seduce them, or I don't even know, or all these missing characters like that reminded me of the Treasure Madre, the guy they paid $100 to get some info. It's just it is what it is. I mean, it's Chuck Norris. I mean, so if you got nothing else better to do and you're in a stupid mood and you want to watch something slightly goofy, put on Firewalker. Doctor, I yield the rest of my time for you for the final thoughts.
Heal the rest of your time. All right. No, this movie, yes, it was a slapstick movie. It wasn't as well. The thing is, they knew they were doing this, and I can see that Chuck Norris was kind of having fun being different and than he normally does. Serious roles, where he's hard ass. No, this was great seeing Louis Gossett Jr. Man, Iron Eagle. Uh, Seeing him doing another role other than just being a pilot, and the scene when they're on the train, they're dressed up as two priests and a nun, and they're like, oh, there must be a chicken for papers, and you all hear, bam, he's like, well, I don't like, and Gossett Jr.'s like, well, I don't approve of this practice. It's routine. So they get called in there because the one guy got shot, because they couldn't find his papers. And his wife, she's sitting there crying over it. He's like, oh, no. They pull him in there because, well, I want you to say a few words. He's like, your prayer. He's like, well, I don't. I was like, I don't speak Latin. He's like, you think they do? So Gus Jr. goes, he starts doing like the little thing, blah, blah, and they're like, oh, man. And then all of a sudden she's like, look, I found his papers. And and the doctor's like, oh, he's going to live. It's not a mortal wound. And they're like, and she's like, thank you. It's like, so, so yeah, this is, the only thing that would have made this better if it wasn't Chuck Norris, and this would have been like what's it, Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor.
People with
This
actual
because
chemistry.
yes, because I could see this being kind of like a Blazing Saddles or movie.
This would be a good movie to watch while you're getting trashed because by the time they're driving around in the jungle in the camo pimped out a VW that gets stuck across in the water, I mean, it's like, yeah, this is no Raiders of the Lost Ark. But we could do that in the 80s and somebody's going, you know what? Let's put a VW in the jungle where there's no, it makes no sense because there's no roads. Okay, let's do it. Oh dear Lord. All right, guys. Yeah, we just wanted to cover Firewalker because it's pretty dope. Stupid. We're gonna be doing
It's pretty
top
hot.
10 movies that the Doctor himself has not seen, covering from the 60s to I think up to now. But he's gonna let us know that. We're gonna talk about each one here coming up. So be looking for that link shortly. For the Doctor, for myself, for everybody in spirit, for Chuck Norris, who hopefully is listening to this as well. God bless America. Stay extreme. Good night.
Toodles.